Mr. Hawkins.
That's who I am.
Odie Hawkins.
Yes.
You have a website?
My website. OdieHawkins.com.
Yes.
Here we are, once again. Last evening, yesterday as a matter of fact, for those who are keeping chronological time, I made a mistake when I made two mistakes when I talked about the books that I've written. Number one, I don't need glasses for this. Well, yes I do. Number one, I have 34 books in print and 10 others, as I say, about to be funneled into plain view. The other thing that occurred to me that I didn't mention, which is inexcusable, and I offer my apologies and pardon, is that I didn't say anything about the people who supply me with these wonderful covers. Ancestral Meridians, for example. Ancestral Meridians, the cover was done by a marvelous Korean-American artist named Sung-hee Hong. Mrs. Hong and I talked about what the cover should be like, what the cover should be about, and she took my suggestions and tossed them into the waste paper basket, which is where they belong. Because what I was talking to her about, what I was suggesting was my grandiose ideas of what the cover should be about, and she did a better cover than I could ever think. It's like having your editor say to you about this marvelous novel that you've written that you know is perfect, saying it needs a little editing. So for those who purchase Ancestral Meridians, please remember that Mrs. Hong did a marvelous job. I wanted to also talk a little bit about other artists who have done book covers for my books. I've been unfortunately, I've been extremely fortunate to be able to have a number of very talented artists. This book, The Palmwine Junction, which is a collection of short stories, I'm going to get back to these books in later stages of these interviews. But in this particular book, Mrs. Su-Chin Lin, a Chinese-American artist, I'm spreading it out around everybody on earth. She gave me exactly the kind of cover I wanted. I wanted to have a storyteller talking to children who basically are innocent and receptive of new ideas. I didn't want to have a bunch of old heads sitting around looking skeptical and all of that. So she did that for me.
Is that one a children's story or?
It's not a children's story.
Okay.
Except for in the sense that all stories are children's stories. Because in my opinion, when we begin to pay attention to stories, we tend to be like children. We want to hear familiar themes over and over. You ever read a story to your grandkid or grandchildren, and they say, "Oh, read that again, tell us that again." They're patient enough to listen to the same thing over and over again. But at the same time, they can be very critical, because if you do not present the story within the context that they can relate to, they tune out. So I wanted to tune my adult audience into, this is not accidental. I wanted to, is the cover?
Yes, I can see the cover.
I wanted to tune my adult audience into stories in the way that children would receive stories. Honestly, without prejudice, with no malice aforethought.
Palmwine
Mrs. Su-Chin Lin. This particular cover, which I'm extraordinarily proud of, comes to this story from the talented, colorful pen of a woman named Zola Salena-Hawkins, my wife. Can a man get much luckier than that? Who designed the kind of cover that I was talking about in the body of the book. Shackles Across Time, in brief, is the story of stories that have not been told yet, having to do with the African involvement in the African slave trade. Or let me put that another way. The African involvement in the Pan-American slave trade. Now, finally, after having said all of that, this particular cover, another cover, incidentally, by Zola Salena-Hawkins. She seems to be all over me. It's a hot day. I'm pausing for a sip of lemonade. Oh my goodness, somebody must have put gin in that. It's called Kwanzaa for Conrad and the Survival Tango. As you can see, looking at this devilishly fierce photo, Conrad was not one of your normal day-to-day citizens, and the stories in the book are not normal day-to-day stories. Having put that aside for a moment, I'm going to take us into what it is that I've been doing for a number of years. And as I said in an earlier program, I think it was yesterday, I'm being sort of pushed into saying things that I've never said before, approaching subjects I've never talked about before. I guess it's because I'm a writer and I've been more interested in writing than about talking about myself and about my books, because I think in many ways, the books speak for themselves. Zola has often said to me, you seem to be the kind of person who wants to create a baby and then let it go. Well, you have to nurture the baby. You have to make sure that everybody knows who the baby is. So after a long series of incidents and coincidences, I wind up sitting in front of you talking about the books that I've written. I'm not going to belabor the point. I would just simply like to say, after 34 books, I deserve to be better known, and with the help and coercion of a number of people, I'm making an effort to do that. No wonder I'm sitting here drinking lemonade. I'm nervous. But not too nervous. What I have right here in my hand is a collection of books and the covers and what they look like. Most of these books can be ordered by you from Amazon.com. Let me repeat that. Amazon.com, Barnes and Nobles, or whoever you order your books from. There are 34 books here, and they're about almost every subject matter you can think of. You're squealing at me. I don't know.
Okay, well, two of the books that initially were published by Holloway House, Ghetto Sketches, and The Black Casanova, have not been reissued recently, and so they will be reissued.
My wife hates Black Casanova because it's an inferior book written as an outline, which was published by a publishing company that never acquired a great reputation because it was such a sleazy place. The place was called Holloway House, and those who had dealings with Holloway House would be willing to say what I just said. It was a sleazy operation. If you have a book, have a publishing company, for example, that would accept the manuscript from you and without your knowledge, publish that manuscript as a book without having you giving you a chance to correct the galleys and do all the things that you do in a legitimate publishing house. And then, worse yet, pile a book cover onto the manuscript that they should not have published. Pile a cover onto it that comes from some out of other thing that they were supposed to be publishing but decided not to. Let me make that a lot plainer. They had an extra book cover that they used on a manuscript that I had sent them for review. Didn't matter. The important thing was to grind the project out, the product out. So I don't have a lot of love for Holloway House, despite the fact that they published 17 books that I wrote. 17 books. I think 15 of them were very fine books. 2 of them were lousy. Holloway House did not give the books adequate coverage, adequate PR, didn't give it anything other than distribution. And despite the shortcomings, the book still sold. As a matter of fact, I can hear from people today, who only can relate to my Holloway House era. I've been beyond that for many, many years now. So the books that I have had published since Holloway House are being printed on demand by Amazon.com.
Oh. They're an Author House.
Author House, sorry.
And iUniverse.
iUniverse.
And another company.
The important thing is that since people have become adjusted to the idea of ordering online, the only thing you have to do is look. Odie Hawkins.
Google Odie Hawkins.
Odie Hawkins. The guy got 34 books.
Yes. Okay.
You know, what are the books about? I'm talking to my immediate family. In my immediate family, my sister Louise and my nieces and nephews, who amount to maybe, 33,000. The only thing they have to do, starting with Eric, Angela, and all the rest of my crew, the only thing they have to do, instead of sending me appreciations via email, is to organize Odie Hawkins, buy your book cover. The only thing that my family has to do, which is composed of 33,000 people. Did I say 3,300? I meant 33,000 because each one of my descendants and my nephews and nieces have so many descendants and nephews that they don't know what to do. Anyway, Eric, Angela, the guy, just fooling around with you. But organize. Ask your local bookstores to bring my books in. I have enough now to be able to say I'm not just fooling around. You all know that. My next 10 books will encompass everything that I'm talking about now and more. I don't know whatever else there is to say other than to be asked 2 pertinent questions by Zola Salena herself. Your turn.
Okay. All right. I'd like to know, have you only done novels? What else have you done?
as they say on television, very good question. No, I've not only done novels, I've been fortunate to be able to say that over a period of time, I've written radio shows, radio plays. I've done a number of screenplays. I would have to take you into the long form of what the movie situation is about, which means that I could tell you, and it is the truth, that I've written like 12 screenplays. Only one was produced, and it was the one that I hate the most because I had nothing to do with the final product, which is what they call it. The screenplay was called The Ghetto Jet Set. It was a satire on just what I'm saying, Ghetto Jet Set. The producers turned it into something called The Monkey Hustle. I consider it an insult, and that's what I'm sapping with today, because fortunately I was only given story credit for the screenplay, and a person who I never liked at all, named Charles Johnson, was given credit for the screenplay. Blessings upon you, my brother. May it stick with you forever. The other screenplays were considered too radical or too strange or too otherworldly for the time. We're talking about the 70s and 80s.
What about Palm Wine Junction? Oh, not Palm Wine Junction. Palmerstown?
The Palmerstown series was a television series that was put into place by Norman Lear and my friend Alex Haley during the course of his big rollout with Roots. And the show lasted approximately, I think, 6 or 7 episodes, simply because it was about something too real for America to deal with at that time and possibly this time, which is why we wind up with what we're looking at now, which is a bunch of trash. It's colorful trash, a lot of it. There's a little bit of it, only a percentage of it that's going to mean something in for future generations. But by and large, it's just simply the same trash that we looked at during the blaxploitation era, which has been updated to current colorful trash. If we are going to do something about what it is that we are about, and I think we all know who we're talking about, it's going to have to come from something real. And so far, just put it in Technicolor and having people have beautiful teeth and show their asses whenever necessary. Well, what's that?
Old school, Mr.
What was your second question?
Okay.
You caught me on a good day.
I see that. All right. And what would you say to a person who wants to be a writer, wants to write their story?
Write your heart out. Do it. Don't allow any person or any institution or anything to tell you that you shouldn't do it. Do it until you wind up having responsible people say to you, this is nonsense, or this is untalented work. Unfortunately, many people who want to write are not writers, who don't have the talent for it. The sooner that you put into a recognition of those circumstances, the better it is for you. Why waste your life trying to write in a mediocre way? We don't want to reward mediocrity. I'm a talented writer. I was a talented writer when I was young, and now I'm an old talented writer.
But you also had people who helped you improve your craft.
Those were the people who said to me, you think you got talent, huh?
Yeah.
All right, prove it.
Okay.
So, without an audience to support me, without people going around to pat me on the back and pat me on the head and say, "Oh, how great you are." I'm thinking in particular of a a radio producer named Elliot Lewis, who was very cold-blooded about it. He says, "I want you to write me material that would move anybody." We're not talking racially here. So I wound up writing for radio for about 2 years, some 50 scripts that some people may not be familiar with, that did exactly what he asked me to do. I wrote Chinese mystery stories. I wrote African American westerns. I wrote whatever my urge to write was, but when it came to his desk, it had to be superior. And I think he gained that position because he had been formerly a producer of the I Love Lucy shows, and he had clout, which meant that he said, "Hey, the guy, this is cool." And that's what it's about.
Yeah, I know that some of the radio shows, I think there are only 16 or 17 that I was able to find on the internet, and that was through the Old Time Radio show. But just like your movie, Detective Bediako, it's hard to get stuff that was in the past because sometimes it's not easy to acquire in the archives. So
the past, as far as I'm concerned, I look at it this way. I've been a Miles Davis fan during the whole course of his career, despite the fact that I didn't love his later works. But I'm with him when he says, what's done is done. And we have to do what's now, or we have to do what's in the future. The works that I'm working on right now are purely future. I don't care about Trump. I don't care about the Trump that is dumping what he's dumping on America. It's not the first time. We've had it dumped on us for as long as we've been here. So, this is nothing new. What I'm concerned about as a creative person is that I'm able to sustain my creative capabilities despite all of the stuff that's dumped on us. And knowing what I know, we're always going to come out smelling like roses.
So that's like what a writer or journalist has to do. No matter what else is going on about them, you must stay true to your craft and write.
I think for any creative person, and I hope we're not going to get too far off into this, otherwise you'll have me sitting here for the rest of the afternoon. What I would say to any person who is involved in a creative endeavor, don't ignore what's going on around you, but feed on it. Like your grandmother used to say, if they give you lemons, make lemonade.
Fantastic.
Yeah, make lemonade. Hey, look, I got to go.
Okay, do you understand? We'll talk about a specific book
tomorrow. We're coming back tomorrow. I want to come back tomorrow for some reason with, I'll think of the reason later. I'm creative. But we'll come back with Kwanzaa for Conrad and a Survival Tango.
It's a good book.
Excuse me?
It's a good book.
It's a good book. And it has a wonderful photo done by Zola Salena-Hawkins. That's you.
Yes, Mr. Hawkins.
Okay.
Thank you. And till tomorrow.